Very excited to talk to you about this series, this message. Before we get into the message specifically, I want to ask you, we spent 6 months in Revelation,
Yeah.
a month in heaven
Yeah.
at the beginning of the year. So we get into this series for the joy. Like, where did that come from? Was that like a word from the Lord? Was that practically, we need to talk about this stuff as a church? Like,
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a little bit of both. Like, as we were going through Revelation, there's a lot of content. There's a lot of worldview. There's a lot of like wow in there. And I started asking kind of myself, and this is almost a little bit of my process when I'm thinking about sermons and series. The Lord just starts provoking some stuff in my heart about like, what are we building in the church? Who is Victory going to become? And right there, as we were going through Revelation, it was like that burning question, like, what are we supposed to do with this? Like, how do we live in light of these things?
Yeah.
That was really, it was almost like, so what? So what now? So what now?
Yeah.
And so I really, honestly, probably about November of last year, I was thinking like, so what?
Wow.
So what do we do? What do we do with that? It feels odd to go 6 months in Revelation talking about Antichrist, Mark of the Beast, Jesus coming back, heaven, and then be like, okay, so now we're going to do a financial series, or whatever it is. Like it didn't hit, and so I was like, so what are we supposed to do, God? And that's where it was. I just started feeling this like Hebrews thing. Like we were kicking around like maybe we do something with kingdom.
Yeah.
And then I was just reading Hebrews one day and got in Hebrews 11. I was like, dang it, like they live different because of heaven.
Yeah.
And then you get over into, therefore, Hebrews 12, like therefore, we should, because of the witnesses, we should throw off the sin. We should set our eyes on Jesus for the joy.
Yeah, man.
And I was like, there it is.
That's
for the joy.
Yeah.
For the joy set before us. And again, it's its own series, but it's lockstep. It's arm in arm, hand in hand with Revelation.
Yeah, I love that. There's this phrase that you said, like, what are we going to burn down in light of this thing?
Yeah.
So you set this up, believism versus discipleship. So tough question. What's an area in your life where you looked at those two things and went, I have to choose discipleship?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's probably our whole story. Like almost every day, if not every day, at least every week, every month, is where do I just believe things?
Wow.
And where am I actually doing things?
Yeah.
And it's I say this, hopefully you know what I'm saying. Like it's relatively easy to believe things.
Yeah.
It doesn't cost you very much to believe things.
Right.
And I think that's why Jesus doesn't let us just sit in believing.
Yeah.
Even the gospel writers would believe on, not just believe in, believe on.
Yeah.
Like I'm putting my trust, like I'm putting the weight of my life, I'm believing on, not just in. I'm actually putting my life, my eternity, my today on Jesus. And, I think there's probably really tangible ways, like probably money was a big thing for me. I recall it a lot. Of being a college student, working out back, and I'd just gotten off my shift, and I had $40 in my pocket, whatever it was. And I remember Summer and I were on a cell phone. We had just gotten them, and that's how old we are. And that Sunday, Pastor Dennis had preached on tithing.
Yeah.
And I remember we were just talking, and I'd never tithed. I'd just given, like, here's $1, And I remember it was just that thing of like, do I just believe this, or am I actually going to do it?
Yeah.
Am I going to be a disciple? And so $4 that weekend. And, I always say it's a lot easier to tithe off of much more when you've tithed off of much less for a long time. But I think, all of it goes to sexuality. It goes to evangelism. It goes to obedience. It's much easier to believe that Jesus is God than to actually let him be your God.
Yeah.
But when he is your God, he doesn't like roommates, and so,
That's so good.
But very graciously, here's what I love about him. It's like very graciously, he doesn't overwhelm you. Like it's like one thing at a time. He's like, all right, come on, we'll deal with that one next. We'll deal with that one next. We'll deal with that one next.
So another thing that you said is discipleship for us here at Victory is head, heart, hands. Yeah. And we tend to live in one camp more than the other ones. For you, what does that look like?
Yeah, it's my head.
Yeah.
100%. So it's probably, it's how I illustrated it in the sermon.
Right.
That may not be true for everybody.
Right.
So, honestly, there's a trap today. We talk a lot about the difference between biblical justice and social justice, and a lot of people even confuse those. And so some people may have massive mascot finger hands, the opposite.
That's
and but in like very tiny intellectual
Right.
brains,
Yeah.
but not in the sense of like they're not smart, but like they'll water down and they'll compromise their beliefs for the sake of doing a lot.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we need each other. As somebody who, obviously I preach a lot, so I'm big on, it's got to be right.
Yeah.
Like I'm held accountable for what I preach. Like
Absolutely.
it's got to be right. And so I need the people who are really big with love. Like
Right.
Summer's really big with love. Like, so she'll challenge me on that stuff sometimes.
Yeah.
Not even overtly. I'll just watch her and challenges me on that. And so I think we all need somebody who's like, there's a man here, I've talked about him before. His name's Dilip. And he's part of here, and he drove for Lyft for a long time and told over 1,000 people about the Lord.
Wow.
And has hundreds who've come to faith in Jesus. I need to hear those stories.
Yeah.
And we need each other. That's part of our thing. Like so I'm very much, if left to myself,
Mm-hmm.
I will sit and I'll read books by Spurgeon and Tozer and
just
C.S.
get
Lewis.
deep.
I'll just go so deep, which does impact my heart. Like my heart grows for the Lord, but I can't trick myself into thinking I'm doing anything.
That's so good.
You know what I'm saying? So I think that's why we all need each other.
Yeah.
And we can't criticize each other. Well, we can convict each other, but we shouldn't criticize each other.
Yeah.
We need to call each other up. And that's what I was trying to do today. I'm trying to call the people, I'm almost preaching myself. Like, hey, if you're not doing anything with your hands, like, it's time to get going. Like, So,
I love the call to missions. Like, when's the last time you went out of the country?
It's true.
Let's do some of that.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Somebody reminded me of that this last week. Like, some people will plan for a year, spend $5,000 to fly 5,000 miles around the world, but they won't take 5 steps into their living room to tell their kids about Jesus.
That's good.
You know what I'm saying? So start at home. Like before you even go on a mission trip, start at home.
Yeah.
Don't pass your neighbors if you haven't told them.
That's good.
So, but again, I think. So what does it look like to activate? Yeah. And sometimes, honestly, it is easier to go to Nicaragua than it is to go to Norcross. Yeah. But start somewhere.
Yeah.
Start somewhere.
Okay, so a lot of really great stuff in the message. A lot to unpack, and love that the call going into small groups. Hey, we're going to talk about this. We're going to put this stuff into practice. But if there's one thing from the message that you wish people would take from it, what would that one thing be?
Yeah, I'll leave you with this. I think it's the call of Luke 14. Of Jesus says, if you really want to be my disciple, you got to love me first. Wow. And it can't just be this static head knowledge love. Like, it really has to flesh its way out into your life, which means your life actually starts taking shape around the gospel. And that, again, that's the difference between a believer and a disciple. A believer is content just to come in and hear a sermon once a month, twice a month. A disciple says, I got to do something about it because he's my king. I got to do something about this. I want people to see Jesus in my life. I got to do something about this. And so really, if there's one thing, it's like, man, my whole life has to take shape around the gospel, which is going to impact my head, my knowledge, because I want to know the right things about God. And it's going to impact my heart because I actually want to love him like he deserves to be loved. And I want to turn around and love people the way he does. So it's got to flesh out through my hands. And I would just love wherever somebody's honest enough to say I'm weak in one of those areas. Yeah. To actually honestly pray to the Lord, like, how can I grow in my heart for Jesus? How can I grow in my hands? How can I grow in my head?
Wow. Well said, man. Thanks, Pastor. Appreciate you, man.